The white plaza of Aurelian Prime did not smell of blood. It smelled of ozone and crushed lavender. High above the crowd, the sky was a bruised purple, streaked with the contrails of atmospheric yachts that drifted like lazy, silver sharks. Thousands of citizens stood in perfect geometric formation. They wore robes of spun glass and heavy velvet, their faces upturned toward the central dais where the execution was about to begin. There was no shouting. There was no weeping. The Aurelian Dominion did not tolerate public displays of disorder. Lady Saralith Vial stood on the observation balcony, her hands clasped behind her back. The wind tugged at her ceremonial sash, a strip of indigo silk that marked her rank within the Ministry of Concordance. She was tall, even for an Aurelian, with skin the color of moonlight and eyes that shifted between violet and gray depending on the light. To the galaxy, she was a striking example of imperial nobility. To herself, she was a liar in a gilded cage. On the dais below, the prisoner knelt. He was a historian from the Outer Rim, a man who had dared to write a paper suggesting the Dominion had once lost a battle. The High Regent stepped forward. He was a towering figure encased in white armor that seemed to absorb the light around him. He raised a gauntleted hand. The crowd held its breath. "Order is the breath of the galaxy," the Regent said, his voice amplified by hidden speakers so that it vibrated in the teeth of every person in the plaza. "Chaos is the suffocation of the soul." He closed his fist. There was no weapon drawn. The executioner did not swing a blade. Instead, the floor beneath the historian began to glow with a harsh, rhythmic light. A hum rose from the ground, deep and nauseating. The historian looked up, his mouth opening in a silent scream. In the span of a single heartbeat, the air around him twisted and his body simply unspooled. Skin, bone, and fabric separated into a billion distinct particles of dust, swirling upward into the ventilation shafts to be recycled. The light faded. The dais was empty. "Perfection," the Regent said. The crowd exhaled in unison. It was a sound like the ocean retreating from the shore. Saralith turned away from the balcony, her stomach churning with a familiar cold acidity. She kept her face smooth, a mask of aristocratic indifference. She had written the press release for this event 3 days ago. She had described the historian as a violent insurrectionist, a man who sought to destabilize the economy. She had managed the truth until it was no longer recognizable, burying the man's actual crime, accuracy, under layers of manufactured fear. She walked briskly down the corridor of the palace, her heels clicking against the obsidian floor. The walls were lined with statues of past emperors, their stone eyes following her. She hated them. She hated their silence. She hated that she was one of the few people alive who knew that half of them had been murdered by their own guards. Not ascended to the stars as the history books claimed. Her communicator chimed. It was a priority summons from the Regent's office. Saralith tapped the device behind her ear. "Report," she said. The voice on the other end was synthetic and dry. "Lady Vale, the human delegation has arrived. You are to attend the reception in the Hall of Echoes. Assess them." Saralith paused. Humans. The newest and least impressive of the Dominion's minor allies. They were short-lived, loud, and messy. "I am on my way," she said. She cut the connection. She needed a drink. Lieutenant Elias Rook tugged at the collar of his dress uniform. It was stiff, itchy, and undoubtedly designed by a committee that had never seen a human neck. He stood near a pillar made of translucent crystal, holding a glass of blue liquid he had no intention of drinking. The Hall of Echoes was a cavernous space, large enough to park a heavy cruiser inside. The ceiling was a mosaic of shifting constellations, mimicking the night sky of the Dominion's homeworld. It was beautiful. It was intimidating. It was excessively expensive. Elias was 32 years old, with dark hair that refused to stay combed and eyes that always seemed to be looking for the nearest exit. He was not a diplomat. He was a security officer assigned to keep the diplomats from getting killed or inadvertently starting a war by using the wrong fork. So far, the mission was a disaster of boredom. The Aurelians were polite, distant, and radiated a sense of superiority so dense it practically had its own gravitational pull. "You look like you are planning a tactical retreat," a voice said. Elias turned. Standing a few feet away was an Aurelian woman who made the room feel suddenly smaller. She was wearing a gown of dark fabric that seemed to absorb the ambient light, structured with sharp, architectural lines. Her hair was swept back in a silver clasp, exposing the sharp elegance of her cheekbones. "I am considering it," Elias said, keeping his tone neutral. "But I have been told the exit protocols are strict. I am Lady Seralith Vael," she said, extending a hand. Her fingers were long and cool. "Lieutenant Elias Rook," he replied, taking her hand. His grip was firm, warm, and rougher than she expected. "United Earth Coalition." "I saw your file," Seralith said. "You were a combat pilot before you transferred to security." "Briefly," Elias said. "I found I preferred the ground. It moves less." Seralith studied him. Most species cowered before Aurelian nobility. They fawned. They stuttered. Elias Rook looked at her as if she were merely another person standing in a room. It was disarming. It was annoying. "Enjoying the hospitality of the Dominion?" she asked. "It is impressive," Elias said, glancing at the vaulted ceiling. "Very symmetric. You people really hate right angles, do you not?" "Nature abhors a straight line," Seralith recited, a standard line from the Imperial Catechism. "Nature also abhors a vacuum," Elias countered, "yet there is an awful lot of empty space in this room." Seralith felt a flicker of amusement. He was sharp. "We value clarity," she said. "Open space allows for open thought, or it leaves nowhere to hide," Elias said. His eyes drifted to the far end of the hall, where a massive holographic projection rotated slowly. It was an image of a suit of armor. It was black and gold, with a helmet that possessed no visor, only a smooth blank faceplate. It looked like a bird of prey cast in metal. "That is the forbidden armor, isn't it?" Elias asked. Seralith stiffened slightly. "It is." "I read the briefing," Elias said. "It says anyone who touches it drops dead, instantly. That is the price of hubris," Seralith said, slipping back into her role as the voice of the regime. "The armor is a sacred relic. It judges the soul. If the soul is impure, the body is consumed." "And everyone is impure?" Elias asked. "So far," Seralith said. "Emperors, saints, assassins. The armor rejects them all. It is the ultimate deterrent. It reminds us that some power is not meant to be held." "Sounds convenient," Elias said. "A weapon that no one can use creates a nice balance of terror." "It is not a weapon," Seralith corrected him. "It is a symbol." "Everything is a weapon if you hold it right," Elias said softly. He took a sip of the blue liquid, grimaced, and set the glass down on a passing traybot. Seralith watched him. He was cynical. He was observant. He was dangerous. "The High Regent has granted your delegation access to the ruins on the third moon," she said abruptly. "We believe your archaeologists might find the pre-imperial structures enlightening." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Enlightening? Is that code for let us see how much the monkeys can understand?" Seralith smiled, a thin, practiced expression. "I am assigned to escort you till we leave at 0800 tomorrow. Do try to be on time. Lieutenant, I am always on time. Lady Vale, Elias said, it is my one virtue. The human transport ship, the unseen horizon, was parked in the orbital dock like a rusted tin can amidst a fleet of diamond yachts. Elias sat in the mess hall, staring at a holographic display. The air smelled of recycled coffee and machine oil. Mirth, give me the analysis, Elias said. A disembodied voice floated from the ceiling speakers. The voice was male, cheerful, and sounded like a radio host from the 20th century. Well, boss, the news is mixed. The AI said, the good news is that the Aurelian history files are incredibly organized. The bad news is that they are full of holes. Big ones. Size of a dreadnought holes. Show me, Elias said. The hologram shifted. Timelines appeared, scrolling rapidly. Look here, Mirth said. 700 years ago, the War of the Three Suns. The official record says the Aurelian Dominion signed a peace accord with the Kistra Alliance. Everyone shook hands, exchanged gifts, and went home happy. And the reality? Elias asked. Census data, Mirth said. Before the war, the Kistra population was 6 billion. 5 years after the peace accord? 0. 0? Elias repeated. Statistical anomaly? Mirth suggested dryly. Or perhaps they all decided to move to a farm upstate. There is no record of a plague, no record of a migration. They just vanished from the database. Elias leaned back, rubbing his temples. Genocide, and a clean one, Mirth added. Someone scrubbed the records, but they missed the secondary resource allocations. You cannot hide the fact that you stopped shipping food to 6 billion people. Does the armor fit into this? Elias asked. Mirth hummed, a sound of digital processing. The forbidden armor appears in the timeline right around the same time the Kistra disappear. The first mention of the curse is 2 months after the so-called peace accord. Elias stared at the floating data. They wiped out a civilization and built a myth to cover the bodies. And now they want to give us a tour, Mirth said. I have a bad feeling about this field trip. Elias, my probability sensors are flashing red. Keep digging, Elias said, but do not trip their alarms. I am offended, Mirth said. I am a ghost. I am a whisper. I am... Just get it done, Elias said. Sarilith sat in her private quarters. The room was sparse, white, and silent. She held a data shard in her hand. It was black and jagged. 10 minutes ago, a courier from the Regent's intelligence division had delivered it. The instructions were simple. Plant this in the human secure server. It contains encrypted schematics of the planetary defense grid. When we find it, it will prove they are planning an invasion. Sarilith turned the shard over in her fingers. It was heavy. She had done this before. She had planted evidence on political rivals. She had altered transcripts to discredit dissident senators. It was her job. It was how she kept the galaxy stable. But the humans were not rivals. They were barely a blip on the radar. They were curious, yes, annoying, certainly, but they were not invaders. Why? She whispered to the empty room. The answer, she knew, was fear. The Regent feared anything he could not control. The humans were unpredictable. Their history was chaotic. They did not worship the Aurelian ideal of static perfection. Therefore, they had to be removed. She stood up and walked to the window. Below, the city of Aurelian Prime glowed with golden light. It was a paradise built on bones. If she refused, she would be executed. Her family would be stripped of their titles. Her name would be erased from the archives. If she obeyed, she would condemn an innocent species to war. She gripped the shard until it dug into her palm. She told herself it was necessary. She told herself that the stability of the Dominion was worth the price of a few human lives. She placed the shard in her pocket. The next morning, the delegation gathered at the base of the Senate Tower. It was a soaring spire of white metal that pierced the clouds. Elias stood with the human ambassador, a tired woman named Corinne. Sarilith waited for them by the entrance, flanked by 2 Imperial guards in gold ceremonial armor. "Lady Vale," Elias said, nodding. "Lieutenant," Sarilith replied. Her voice was tighter than before. They moved into the grand atrium. The space was filled with dignitaries, senators, and lobbyists. It was a sea of color and noise. "We are to meet with Senator Kalin before we depart," Sarilith explained. "He is the head of the Cultural Exchange Committee. He is also a reformer," Elias noted. "I read that he wants to reduce military spending." Sarilith shot him a warning glance. "Do not discuss politics here, Lieutenant. The walls have ears, and the floors have microphones. I assume," Elias murmured. They reached the center of the atrium. Senator Kalin was speaking to a group of reporters. He was an older Aurelian, his face lined with age, his robes simple and unadorned. "We must welcome new perspectives," Kalin was saying. "The galaxy is too large for only one voice." As he spoke, Elias felt a prickle on the back of his neck. It was an instinct honed by years of flying combat patrols in the asteroid belt. Something was wrong. The air felt too static. He scanned the crowd. To his left, a young aide was holding a heavy satchel. The aide looked nervous. Sweating, Elias did not think. He moved. "Get down!" he shouted. He lunged forward, tackling the young aide just as the satchel erupted. It was not a chemical explosive. It was a sonic charge. A wave of concussive force slammed into the atrium. The sound was a physical hammer. Glass shattered, the floor buckled, bodies were thrown like dolls. Elias hit the ground, shielding the aide with his own body. The world turned white, then gray, then rang with a high-pitched whine. He groaned and rolled over. Dust filled the air. He coughed, tasting plaster and blood. The aide beneath him was shaking, eyes wide with terror, but alive. Elias pushed himself up. His ears were ringing. He looked toward where the senator had been standing. Senator Kalin was on the ground. He was not moving. Blue blood pooled around his head. Chaos erupted. Screams, shouts, security alarms blared. Sarilith was on her feet a few meters away. She had been knocked down by the blast but seemed unhurt. She stared at the scene, her eyes wide. She looked at the dead senator. Then she looked at Elias, who was helping the terrified aide to his feet. Guards rushed in, weapons drawn. "Secure the area," a captain shouted. Sarilith's mind raced. This was not the plan. The data shard was supposed to frame them later. This was an assassination. Here. Now. She saw the captain looking at Elias. The human was covered in dust, standing over the wreckage. It would be so easy to point a finger, to say he did it. But she had seen him. She had seen him dive. He had not dived away from the blast. He had dived toward the aide. He had saved an Aurelian life. "Lady Vale!" the captain barked. "Did you see the assailant?" Sarilith looked at Elias. He met her gaze. His face was streaked with soot, but his eyes were clear. There was no fear in them, only a grim acceptance. Sarilith swallowed. "It was a remote detonation," she said, her voice steady. The device was in the satchel. She pointed to the shredded remains of the bag. "And the human?" the captain asked, aiming his rifle at Elias. "He saved the boy," Sarilith said. "He is not the attacker." The captain hesitated, then lowered his weapon. Elias let out a breath he did not know he was holding. He nodded once to Sarilith, a small, almost imperceptible gesture of thanks. Sarilith turned away. She felt sick. 2 hours later, the narrative was set. Sarilith stood on a podium in the press briefing room. Cameras hovered around her like mechanical insects. Initial investigations suggest the involvement of radical separatist factions. She read from the teleprompter. However, we are investigating links to off-world terror cells. She did not say the word human, but the implication was there. The script had been written for her by the regent's office while the smoke was still clearing. They were spinning the narrative. The assassination was being used to stoke fear of outsiders. Elias stood in the back of the room, leaning against the wall. He had refused medical treatment for the bruises on his back. When the briefing ended, Sarilith walked down the hallway. She found Elias waiting for her in a quiet alcove near the lift tubes. "You lie very well," Elias said. His voice was not angry, just tired. "I speak what is required," Sarilith said. "You blamed ghosts," Elias said. "Separatists? Terror cells? You know that bomb was domestic and it was a political hit. Kalen was too soft, so your regent removed him." "Be quiet," Sarilith hissed, stepping closer to him. "You have no idea what you are talking about." "I know what I saw," Elias said. "And I know you saw it too. You saved me back there." "Why?" Sarilith looked away. "It would have been a waste of resources. You are a diplomat. I am a soldier," Elias said. "And I know when I am being herded." He took a step closer. The distance between them was less than a foot. He smelled of dust and antiseptic. She smelled of expensive perfume and cold fear. "Be careful." "Elias," Sarilith whispered. Her mask slipped, just for a second. Her eyes showed a depth of panic she had never revealed before. "This place is not a palace. It is a grinder. If you do not bend, it will break you." "I do not bend well," Elias said softly. "Then you will die here," she said. She turned to leave, but her communicator chimed. It was the priority signal again. She tapped it. "Yes?" The regent's voice was ice. "Lady Vale, the human survived the incident. This is inconvenient, but perhaps useful." "What are your orders?" "High Regent," she asked. "We need a definitive test," the regent said. "We need to show the galaxy that these newcomers are spiritually hollow. Bring the human, Lieutenant Rook, to the Vault Moon immediately." "The Vault Moon?" Sarilith asked, her blood running cold. "Yes," the regent said. "Let him stand before the forbidden armor. Let the galaxy watch him burn." The connection clicked off. Sarilith stood frozen. The Vault Moon. It was a death sentence. No one survived the armor. She looked back at Elias. He was watching her, waiting. "What is it?" he asked. Sarilith composed her face. She pulled the icy mask back into place, hiding the tremor in her hands. "Change of plans." "Lieutenant," she said, "we are not going to the ruins." "Where are we going?" Elias asked. "To the vault," Sarilith said. "The regent has granted you a rare honor. You are going to see the forbidden armor up close." Elias narrowed his eyes. He saw the tension in her jaw. He saw the way her fingers twitched. "Is that an honor?" he asked. "Or an execution?" Sarilith turned toward the lift. "With the Dominion," she said, "there is rarely a difference. Come. We have a schedule to keep." The shuttle descent was not a gentle glide. It was a calculated fall through an atmosphere that screamed against the hull. The Vault Moon of Aurelian Prime was a gray, desolate sphere, a graveyard of silence orbiting the golden splendor of the capital world. From the viewport, Elias Rook watched the landscape rise to meet them. It was not rock and crater, it was architecture. The entire surface was a sprawl of nanolith cathedrals, spires of black stone that twisted upward like frozen smoke, and vast empty plazas where the dust of 10,000 years had settled in perfect, undisturbed drifts. Lady Sarilith Vile sat opposite him, strapped into her crash couch. Her eyes were closed, her face a mask of porcelain calm. She had not spoken since they left the capital. "Rough air," Elias said. Sarilith opened her eyes. "Turbulence is expected. This moon has active atmospheric stabilizers that have not been calibrated in 6 centuries. She unbuckled as the shuttle slammed onto the landing pad with a metallic groan. The engines whined down, dying into a low hum. "Welcome to the Sepulchre of Kings," she said. Elias grabbed his field kit. Cheerful name. They stepped out onto the landing platform. The air was thin and cold, smelling of ozone and old stone. A walkway stretched ahead of them, suspended over a canyon of dark machinery that pulsed with a faint, rhythmic blue light. Standing guard along the path were the silent guardians, towering statues of headless warriors, each carved from a single block of meteor iron, their hands resting on the pommels of stone swords. Sarilith walked with a brisk, military cadence. She wore a heavy field coat over her uniform, the high collar turned up against the wind. Elias struggled to keep pace, his boots skidding slightly on the frost-slicked metal. "Do we have a map?" Elias asked. "The path is linear," Sarilith said without looking back. "There is only one destination, the chamber of the armor." She stopped at a heavy blast door. It was covered in warning glyphs that glowed with a dull, malevolent red. "Official protocol requires us to scan for biocontaminants," she said. She raised her wrist computer to the panel. Elias watched her hands. They were trembling. It was subtle, a minute vibration in her fingers, but he saw it. "You are nervous," he said quietly. "I am cold," she replied sharply. "Here," Elias said. He reached into his pack and pulled out a thermal hand warmer, a small chemical packet that snapped to activate. He held it out. "It is standard issue for human infantry," he said. "Not elegant, but it works." Sarilith stared at the packet, then at his face. She was used to deference or fear. She was not used to someone noticing her physical discomfort. "I do not require charity, Lieutenant." "It is not charity," Elias said, placing the packet on the console next to her hand. "It is logistics. Shaking hands make mistakes. We are in a place rigged to kill us. I would prefer you to be steady." Sarilith hesitated. She picked up the packet. The heat was instant, seeping into her frozen skin. She let out a breath she had been holding. "Thank you," she said, her voice dropping an octave, losing some of its imperious edge. She keyed the sequence. The blast doors groaned and slid open. The interior was a labyrinth. The corridors were vast, lined with columns that seemed to stretch up into infinite darkness. The only light came from the floating drones that trailed Sarilith, casting long, dancing shadows against the walls. "Mirth," Elias said into his comms. "Are you getting this? Receiving loud and clear." The AI chirped in his ear. "The architecture is fascinating, and it is Aurelian, but older. The syntax of the carvings is different. It is less about conquest and more about containment." "Containment of what?" Elias asked. "Unknown," Mirth said. "But my sensors are picking up an energy signature about 500 meters ahead. It is off the charts." "And Elias? It is not just one signature. There is a secondary resonance coming from behind a wall to your left." Elias stopped. He looked at the wall Mirth had indicated. It looked solid, a seamless slab of black granite. "Lady Vile," he said. Sarilith paused and turned back. "What is it?" "My scanner is picking up a cavity behind this wall," Elias said. "A room." "There are no other rooms," Sarilith said. "The schematics are clear. This is a single corridor leading to the main vault. Elias walked over to the wall. He ran his hand along the stone. It felt warm. Your schematics are Imperial records, right? He asked. History written by the winners. Maybe they left a few chapters out. Saralith frowned. She walked back to him, checking her own scanner. It showed nothing but solid rock. My sensors show density, she said. Nothing else. That is because your sensors are looking for what they are told to look for. Elias said. Mirth is looking for anomalies. He pressed his ear to the stone. There is a hum. Listen. Saralith stepped closer. She leaned in, her shoulder brushing against his arm. She stiffened, then forced herself to relax. She listened. Deep within the rock, there was a vibration, a thrumming sound, like a heartbeat trapped in a box. This should not be here, she whispered. She pulled a multi-tool from her belt. She adjusted the frequency and pressed it against the stone. If this is a structural flaw, we need to document it, she said, rationalizing the deviation. She activated the tool. A beam of sonic energy hit the wall. The stone shivered. Then, with a sound like cracking ice, a section of the wall dissolved, revealing a hidden archway. Dust poured out, smelling of stale air and dried spices. Elias clicked on his flashlight. After you? Saralith stared into the darkness. This was a violation of protocol. This was how people disappeared. But the curiosity, the itch that had always plagued her beneath her conditioning, was too strong. We investigate, she said. Briefly. The hidden chamber was circular, dominated by a central pedestal that held a glowing blue prism. The walls were covered in murals that had not been defaced by Imperial censors. Elias swept his light across the images. They depicted a species that was tall and slender, not unlike the Aurelians, but with 4 arms and eyes that wept light. They were building the armor. They were forging it in the heart of a dying star. Look at the script, Elias said. Can you read it? Saralith moved to the wall. Her eyes scanned the ancient glyphs. It was a dialect of High Aurelian, archaic and complex, but readable. It says, "The Great Filter." She translated slowly. It says, "We build the cage to hold the beast, not the beast of flesh, but the beast of will." She turned to the next panel. It showed a figure wearing the armor. The figure was standing between a cowering village and a massive, dark army. The army was burning. It was a protector, Elias said. Saralith felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The official history taught that the armor was a cursed object created by demons to tempt the weak. This contradicts the third catechism, she murmured. Elias walked to the central pedestal. The prism pulsed. Mirth. Can you interface with this? I can try, the AI said. But do not blame me if I accidentally download a virus from the Bronze Age. Elias placed his hand near the light. A holographic display flickered into life. It was grainy, degraded by time, but the image was clear. A voice spoke from the recording. It was melodic, sad, and terrifyingly human in its tone. We have failed. The lust for dominion spreads like a plague. The Aurelian war masters come. They do not want peace, they want submission. We have created the armor of the just to judge them. It will not bond with those who seek power. It will only bond with those who seek to serve. To all others, it is fire. The recording fizzled and died. Silence filled the room. Saralith stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. Her entire worldview, the foundation of her education, was cracking. They lied, she whispered. The armor does not kill everyone. It kills conquerors. And since your empire is built on conquest, Elias said softly, it kills every Aurelian leader who touches it. Saralith looked at him. Her eyes were wide, vulnerable. If this is true, she said, then the test. Her communicator beeped. The sound was harsh, cutting through the heavy atmosphere of the tomb. She looked at the message. Her face went pale. "What is it?" Elias asked. "It is the High Regent," she said. The message was sent on a priority channel. She read it aloud, her voice hollow. "The preparations are complete. The galaxy requires a demonstration. The human volunteer will undergo the trial of the armor in 72 hours. Ensure he is prepared to die with dignity." Elias let out a short, dark laugh. "Volunteer," he said. "I do not remember signing a form. It is a trap," Saralith said. She began to pace, the heels of her boots clicking rapidly on the stone floor. "They do not just want to kill you. They want to prove that humans are spiritually unworthy. When you touch the armor and die, they will use the footage to justify a blockade of Earth. They will claim you are a danger to the cosmic order." Elias leaned against the pedestal. "So, if I refuse, I am a coward. If I agree, I am toast." "We have to leave," Saralith said. "We have to delete this log and pretend we never found this room. If they know we saw this." She stopped. She looked at the recording device. "If we delete it, the truth is gone forever," Elias said. Saralith looked at him. He was calm. Terrifyingly calm. "Elias," she said, "you cannot take the test. The armor kills. It kills conquerors," Elias corrected. "And you are a soldier," Saralith said. "You are part of an expansionist military. Do you really think your soul is pure enough to survive a weapon designed to judge moral perfection?" "I do not know," Elias said. "But I know that if I run, my planet gets blockaded, maybe invaded." He looked at the prism. "We need to keep looking," he said. "We need to know more before the clock runs out." Saralith looked at her wrist computer. The Regent's surveillance demons were active. They were recording audio and video, buffering it to be uploaded when they returned to the ship. She made a choice. It was not a conscious decision, weighing pros and cons. It was an impulse, born of a sudden, fierce desire to not be a pawn. She tapped a sequence into her interface. Error, data corruption, loop enabled. She had just set the surveillance feed to replay the last 10 minutes of silence on a loop. To the Regent's monitors, it would look like they were simply walking down a long hallway. "I have disabled the live feed," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I have bought us maybe an hour before they noticed the telemetry glitch." Elias looked at her. He understood what that meant. Treason. "Why?" he asked. "Because," Saralith said, looking at the ancient mural of the Protector. "I am tired of the lies." They pushed deeper into the facility. The architecture became more hostile. The floor was lined with pressure plates, and the air hummed with dormant energy fields. "Watch your step," Saralith warned. "These are kinetic barriers. If you trigger one, it will liquefy your internal organs." "Charming," Elias said. They reached a vast domed chamber. In the center, suspended in a beam of gravity-defying light, was the forbidden armor. It was breathtaking. It was not just a suit. It was a sculpture of violence and grace. The metal was black, shifting like oil, with veins of gold that seemed to pulse. It hung there, silent, waiting. As they approached, the air pressure dropped. Intruder detected. A mechanical voice boomed from the walls. It was not the gentle voice of the recording. It was a defense system. Saralith's eyes widened. "Run!" From the shadows of the dome, shapes emerged. They were vault guardians, spider-like constructs of silver metal, moving with terrifying speed. Elias drew his sidearm, a kinetic pistol that looked like a toy against the scale of the room. Sarilith pulled a shock baton from her coat. "To the alcove!" Elias shouted, pointing to a narrow fissure in the wall. He fired 3 shots. The round sparked harmlessly off the lead guardian's carapace. The machine reared up, charging a plasma cannon. Sarilith threw a flash grenade. A blinding white light filled the chamber. The machine screeched, their sensors overloaded for a fraction of a second. It was enough. Elias grabbed Sarilith's hand and pulled her into the fissure. They scrambled back, squeezing through the narrow gap just as a bolt of plasma scorched the stone where they had been standing. The rock glowed molten orange. The fissure opened into a small, sealed maintenance crawl space. It was dark, cramped, and dead-ended. Outside, the guardians chattered and slammed against the rock, trying to widen the opening. Elias slumped against the back wall, breathing hard. Sarilith was pressed against him, her chest heaving, and there was nowhere to move. Her legs were tangled with his. "Are you hit?" Elias gasped. "No!" Sarilith said. She was shaking. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold shock. "We are trapped. They will give up," Elias said. "They are automated defenses and they have a patrol perimeter. If they cannot reach us, they will eventually reset." "How do you know?" Sarilith asked. "I do not," Elias admitted. "But it sounds optimistic." He shifted his weight, trying to give her more space, but it was impossible. The space was barely large enough for one person, let alone 2. Sarilith looked at him. In the dim light of his wrist comp, his face was sharp, shadowed. He was warm. She could feel the heat of his body through his uniform. It was a stark contrast to the cold metal of the vault, the cold logic of her life. "I jeopardized the mission," she whispered. "I disabled the feed. I led us into a trap. The Regent will execute me." Elias looked at her. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair away from her face. His hand lingered near her cheek. "You kept us alive," he said. "That is not failure." Sarilith looked into his eyes. They were dark, kind, and terrifyingly seeing. He saw her. Not the Lady Vale, not the intelligence agent, just Sarilith. "I am afraid," she confessed. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "I am afraid of dying. I am afraid of living like this. I am afraid of what I am becoming." "You are becoming someone who chooses," Elias said. "That is the scary part. Freedom is terrifying." He did not pull his hand away. Sarilith leaned into his touch. It was a surrender. For a moment, the screaming machines outside did not matter. The politics of the galaxy did not matter. There was a pull between them, a gravity stronger than the moon's. Sarilith felt a sudden, fierce longing to close the distance, to bury herself in his warmth, to find an anchor in the storm. She placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. It was beating fast, steady and strong. "Elias," she breathed. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. He was waiting. He was giving her the choice. Sarilith leaned forward. Their foreheads touched. It was intimate, electric, a promise of something that could burn them both alive. "Excuse me," a cheerful voice echoed in the small space. They jumped apart, banging their heads against the low ceiling. "Ouch," Elias muttered. "Mirth?" Sarilith asked, her voice breathless. "I hate to interrupt the oxytocin spike," the AI said. "My sensors indicate a 90% probability of imminent romantic engagement. However, I also detect that the Guardians have entered standby mode. The coast is clear. Also, your heart rates are dangerously elevated. Do you require medical assistance?" Elias laughed, a sound that was half relief, half frustration. "No, Mirth. We are fine. Just scanning the area." "Right," Mirth said. "Scanning. Very thorough." Sarilith looked at Elias. Her face was flushed silver-violet. She did not look away. "We should move," she said softly. "Right," Elias said. They slipped out of the crevice. The guardians had retreated to their alcoves, dormant once more. They moved toward the rear of the chamber, moving quietly. Sarilith led them to a console embedded in the base of the armor's platform. "This is the primary data core," she said. "If there is a record of the first test, it will be here." She interfaced her tool. This time, her hands were steady. Elias stood guard, watching the shadows. "I found it," she said after a moment. "File date, 3,000 years ago." She projected the data. It was a text file, an Imperial after-action report. Subject: the Kistra descent. Action: deployment of Relic 01. Outcome: total erasure. Note: the armor did not reject the user. The user, High Warlord Vael, commanded the armor to purge the planet. The armor amplified his intent. The feedback loop destroyed his mind, but the planet was cleansed. Directive: rewrite history. The armor is to be feared, not used. Sarilith froze. "Vael," she whispered. Elias looked at the text. High Warlord Vael. "An ancestor? My great-grandfather, 20 generations removed," she said. Her voice was numb. "We were taught he died a hero, defending the border. He was a butcher," Elias said, "and the armor let him do it." "No," Sarilith said, reading further. "Look, the armor tried to stop him. It burned his mind to break the connection, but the weapon had already fired." She looked up at Elias. "The armor is not a gun. It is a mirror. It amplifies what is inside you. If you are full of hate, it becomes a bomb. If you are full of protection," Elias suggested. "Perhaps," Sarilith said. She looked at the armor floating above them. It no longer looked like a monster. It looked tragic, a tool of justice misused by a tyrant, then blamed for the crime. "I carry his blood," Sarilith said. "The blood of the genocide." "You are not your ancestors," Elias said firmly. "You are you. You broke the surveillance. You saved the data. You are breaking the cycle." Sarilith looked at him. The connection between them was stronger now, forged in the truth of the dark vault. "We have to go back," she said. "We have the proof. If we show this, they will kill us," Elias said. "If we do not, they will kill everyone," Sarilith replied. The return trip was silent, but it was a companionable silence. They walked shoulder to shoulder. When they reached the shuttle, Sarilith reactivated the comms feed. "Lady Vale." The pilot's voice crackled. "We have been trying to reach you. The Regent is demanding a status update. Signal interference in the lower levels." Sarilith lied smoothly. "We are en route to the capital." "Understood." They strapped in. As the shuttle lifted off, leaving the gray tomb behind, Elias looked at Sarilith. 72 hours, he said. "We will be ready," she said. She reached across the aisle and briefly, tightly, squeezed his hand. Back on Aurelian Prime, the atmosphere was electric. Giant holographic screens floated above the city, broadcasting the Regent's face. Citizens of the Dominion. The Regent boomed. Elias and Sarilith stood in the spaceport arrivals hall, watching the broadcast. "The time for judgment is at hand. The humans claim to be our equals. They claim to understand the burden of power. In 3 days, their representative will stand before the forbidden armor." The screen shifted to show a massive image of Elias's face, taken from his security file. "Lieutenant Elias Rook has been chosen. He will touch the face of the god. And if he burns, let it be a lesson to all who would grasp for glory they have not earned." The crowd in the spaceport cheered. It was a hungry sound. Elias watched his own face on the screen. He looked calm, professional. Inside, His stomach was doing slow rolls. "Well," he said, "no pressure." Saralith stood beside him. She did not cheer. She watched the screen with cold, calculating eyes. "They want a show," she said quietly. "Then let us give them one," Elias said, "but not the one they wrote." He looked at her. "Are you with me?" Saralith looked at the human officer who had made her laugh, who had kept her warm, who had seen her fear and called it bravery. "Until the end," she said, and for the first time in her life, she meant it. The capital city of Aurelian Prime was drowning in gold, banners draped from every spire, fluttering in the artificial breeze. They bore the crest of the Dominion, a sunburst skewering a planet, and the face of Lieutenant Elias Rook. But the image had been altered. His eyes were darkened, his jaw set in a snarl. The caption beneath, projected in letters 50 feet high, read, "The arrogance of the lesser." Inside the diplomatic compound, the air was stale. The human delegation was under house arrest, politely termed protective custody. Ambassador Corinne paced the small conference room, her heels digging into the plush carpet. "They have cut our subspace comms," she said. "We are effectively silenced. If you go out there, Elias, you are walking into a slaughter." Elias sat at the table, cleaning his fingernails with a combat knife. He looked calm, but his knee was bouncing with a nervous rhythm. "It is a test," he said. "It is a public execution," Corinne corrected. "Same thing, usually." Elias shrugged. "But we have an advantage. They think the game is about power. We know it is about intent." The door chimed. 2 Imperial guards stepped in, their armor polished to a mirror shine. Between them walked Lady Saralith Vael. She looked different. She wore the ceremonial white of the High Court, a stark contrast to her usual dark field gear. A heavy medal hung around her neck, gleaming with diamonds. "Leave us," she commanded. The guards hesitated, then bowed and retreated, sealing the door. "Nice jewelry," Elias said, nodding at the medal. Saralith touched the cold metal at her throat. Her face was pale. "It is the star of loyalty," she said. "The regent pinned it on me an hour ago. He broadcast the ceremony to the entire sector. I am now the face of the prosecution." "And if you slip?" Elias asked. Saralith walked to the window, staring out at the golden propaganda. "He whispered the terms to me while the cameras were flashing," she said softly. "My sister, Ilara, has been moved to a secure facility. If I deviate from the script, if I show mercy, if I fail to ensure your humiliation, Ilara will be ejected out of an airlock." The room went silent. Elias stopped cleaning his knife. He stood up and walked to her, stopping a respectful distance away. "We can stop this," he said. "We have 72 hours, Saralith said, turning to face him. "The test is scheduled for the Festival of Ascendance. We cannot just hope the armor likes you. Elias, hope is not a strategy." "Agreed," Elias said. "We need the instruction manual." He tapped his earpiece. "Mirth, you there?" "Always, boss," the AI chirped. "And I have found your guy." "My guy?" "The archivist," Mirth explained. "The one who uploaded those original schematics to the vault before the purge. Imperial intelligence thinks he is dead. But I tracked a unique data signature to a mining world in the Neon Ring. He is alive. He is hiding. And he knows how the machine thinks." Saralith looked at the map Mirth projected. "Orax," she said, distaste curling her lip. "The smog world. It is a haven for smugglers, defectors, and scrap merchants." "Perfect," Elias said. "I need a vacation." "How do we get off planet?" Corinne asked. "You are the most watched man in the galaxy." Saralith touched the star of loyalty around her neck. I am the regent's favorite right now, she said grimly. I have clearance to take a prisoner for interrogation at an off-site facility. She looked at Elias. I am arresting you. Lieutenant, try to look terrified. Orax was a planet that looked like it had been dipped in neon and rolled in grime. Rain fell in constant greasy sheets, sizzling against the pavement. The skyline was a chaotic jumble of refineries and casinos, linked by suspended walkways that vibrated with the bass of 1,000 nightclubs. Saralith steered the unmarked transport through the traffic. She had ditched the white ceremonial robes for a nondescript trench coat, but she still moved like a queen trying to ignore a bad smell. Elias sat in the passenger seat. He was unrecognizable. He wore a purple velvet cape, a monocle that zoomed in and out with a mechanical whir, and a hat that featured a very large, very fake feather. Is the hat necessary? Saralith asked, gripping the controls. Absolutely, Elias said, adjusting his collar. We are meeting a fence at a black market auction. If I look like a soldier, they will shoot me. If I look like a spy, they will stab me. But if I look like Count Vex of the Nebular Rim, a man with more money than brain cells, they will just try to rob me, and that I can handle. You look ridiculous, Saralith said. That is the point. Elias grinned. You are my bodyguard. Try to look menacing. I do not have to try, Saralith muttered. They landed on a rooftop pad above a sprawling bazaar called the Rust Market. The air smelled of sulfur and fried noodles. The contact is in the sub-basement, Mirth whispered in their ears. Look for a shop selling pre-war kinetic watches. They descended into the crowd. It was a crush of bodies, multi-limbed aliens, cyborgs with glowing eyes, and humans with neural jacks. Elias strutted. He did not walk. He paraded. He swung a silver cane he had fabricated on the ship. Make way, he boomed, his voice projected by a vocal modulator to sound deeper and more pompous. Count Vex requires legroom. Do not touch the velvet. Saralith walked a step behind him, hand hovering near the blaster hidden in her coat. She watched the crowd part. Some laughed, some rolled their eyes, but no one looked at him with suspicion. He was too loud to be a threat. He stopped at a stall selling rusted engine parts. You there, Elias shouted at a four-eyed shopkeeper. Do you have anything vintage? I am looking for a toaster from the 21st century. I hear they make excellent paperweights. The shopkeeper hissed and shooed him away. Elias turned to Saralith, winking behind his monocle. See, I am blending in. You are attracting the attention of every pickpocket in the sector, Saralith noted dryly. Good, Elias said. Keep them looking at the feather. They reached the sub-basement. It was quieter here, the air thick with the hum of illegal servers. At the end of a dark corridor stood a shop with a single ticking clock in the window. They entered. The bell above the door jangled. The shop was crammed with junk. Piles of data drives, broken droids, and ancient paper books. Behind the counter sat a creature that looked like a turtle made of copper. He wore heavy magnification goggles. We are closed, the creature croaked. I seek the truth, Elias announced, spreading his arms. And I am willing to pay in credits. Spice, or perhaps a sonnet written by my grandmother. The creature stared at him. Get out. Code phrase, Mirth prompted. Elias dropped the cane. He leaned over the counter, his voice dropping the ridiculous accent. The bird does not fear the cage, Elias said softly. It fears the sky. The creature froze. He adjusted his goggles, zooming in on Elias's face. Then he looked at Saralith. An Aurelian, the creature hissed, a crow of the state. She is with me, Elias said. We are here for the armor. The creature, the archivist, scuttled back. locking the door with a remote. "You are the human," he said. "The one on the news, the dead man walking." "I prefer terminally optimistic," Elias said. "Why are you here?" the archivist asked. "We know it is a moral engine," Saralith said, stepping forward. "We found the vault, but we need to know how it judges. Does it read minds? Does it read history?" "It reads intent," the archivist said. He climbed down from his stool. "It is a symbiote. It connects to your neural pathways. If it senses a desire to dominate, to control, to enslave, it creates a feedback loop. It burns the neurons that form the thought, so it kills ambitious people." Elias summarized. "It kills tyrants," the archivist corrected. "But there is a catch. There is always a catch." Saralith sighed. "The armor has been dormant for 3,000 years," the archivist said. "It is hungry. It is lonely. Its sensitivity is dialed up to maximum. It will not just look for grand ambition. It will look for the seed, the small, quiet desire to force your will upon another. Even for a good cause." Saralith paled. "Even for a good cause? If you want to save someone so badly that you are willing to crush them to do it, the armor will kill you," the archivist said. "You must be pure. You must offer protection without possession. Can you do that, human? Can you hold a sword and promise not to cut?" Elias was silent. He thought about the war. He thought about the times he had wanted to burn the world to save his squad. "I do not know," he said honestly. The shop shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. "Boom," Mirth said. "We have company. Imperial hunters. 3 squads. They just breached the perimeter." "They found us?" Saralith asked. "You are driving a government car," Mirth pointed out. "I masked the signal, but they triangulated the credit transaction for the landing pad. My bad. We need to go," Elias said. The escape was a blur of neon and noise. They burst out of the back of the shop into an alleyway slick with rain. Laser fire erupted immediately, sizzling through the air. "Get down!" Saralith shouted, shoving Elias behind a dumpster. 3 figures in stealth armor materialized at the end of the alley. They were elite trackers, faceless and fast. "Surrender the traitor!" one of them amplified. Saralith drew her weapon. It was a heavy military-grade blaster. "Go left," she told Elias. "I will draw their fire." "You are the target," Elias argued. "If they catch you, the story ends," Saralith snapped. "Move!" Elias bolted. He scrambled up a fire escape, his purple cape snagging on the metal. He ripped it free, discarding the Count Vex persona in the mud. Saralith broke cover. She fired 2 precise shots, dropping the lead hunter. The others returned fire. A plasma bolt grazed her shoulder, scorching the trench coat. She hissed in pain but kept moving, rolling behind a crate of discarded droid parts. She checked her ammo. Low. "Lady Vale," the hunter called out. "Surrender the human and your rank will be restored. This is your last chance to return to the fold." Saralith looked up. She saw Elias on the walkway above, looking down at her. He had stopped. He was raising his pistol, aiming not at the hunters, but at a support beam above them. He was not leaving her. She looked at the hunters. They were her people. They were the system she had served her whole life. They were order. They were safety. But they were wrong. "I decline," she said. She fired at a fuel canister next to the hunters. Elias fired at the support beam. The beam collapsed, slamming into the canister. The explosion was a blossom of orange fire that consumed the alley. Saralith ran. She sprinted through the smoke, leaping for the ladder Elias lowered. He grabbed her hand, hauling her up onto the walkway. They ran across the rooftops, the city of Orax blurring beneath them. They did not stop until they reached the landing pad. The transport roared to life. As they lifted off, leaving the hunters and the neon chaos behind, Sarilith slumped in her seat. She was breathing hard, clutching her shoulder. "You stayed," she said. "You waited," Elias replied. He was stripping off the ridiculous velvet jacket. "You shot at your own squad," Elias noted gently. "They gave me an order," Sarilith said, staring out at the stars. "I chose to disobey." "That is treason," Elias said. "No," Sarilith said. She looked at him, her eyes fierce and bright. "That is freedom." The journey back to Aurelian Prime took 6 hours. The ship was quiet, running on silent mode to avoid patrols. Elias sat in the medical bay, applying a gel bandage to Sarilith's shoulder. The wound was superficial, a nasty burn, but it needed care. Sarilith hissed as the gel touched her skin. "Sorry," Elias said. "It is fine," she said through gritted teeth. He worked with efficient, gentle hands. He did not treat her like a porcelain doll, but he did not treat her like a soldier either. He treated her like something precious that had been damaged. "You asked the archivist if the armor judges history," Elias said, breaking the silence. "Why?" Sarilith looked at the sterile white wall. "My family," she said. "We have always been the keepers of the gate. We serve the throne. We do the dark things so the citizens can live in the light. I was raised to believe that order is the only virtue, that chaos is the enemy." She looked at him. "But you, Elias, you are chaos, you are messy. You joke when you should be afraid. You risk your life for strangers. And yet, you are more moral than any high priest I have ever met." Elias finished the bandage. He wiped his hands on a cloth. "We are not chaos, Sarilith. We are just unfinished humans. I mean, we make mistakes. We fall down, but we try to get up better than we fell." Sarilith turned on the exam table to face him. Her legs dangled off the edge. "I am terrified," she admitted. Her voice was small. "Not of the regent. Not of the execution. I am terrified of what happens if we win. I do not know who I am without the Empire. My entire life has been a script. If I tear it up, what is left?" Elias stepped closer. He stood between her knees, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "You are left," he said. He reached out and took her hand. His thumb traced the line of her knuckles. "When I was a kid," Elias said, "I grew up on a station near the edge of Dominion space. We were Tier 3 citizens. That meant we got the leftover food, the recycled air. I used to watch the Aurelian ships fly by, so perfect and gold. I hated them. I wanted to burn them all down." Sarilith squeezed his hand. "And now?" she asked. "Now," Elias said, looking into her violet eyes. "Now I realize that the people on those ships were just as trapped as I was. Just in a prettier cage." He looked down at their joined hands, pale alien skin against tan human skin. "I do not want to burn the ships anymore. Sarilith, I just want to open the doors." Sarilith felt a crack in her chest, a fissure widening into something vast and aching. She looked at this man, this unremarkable, short-lived, chaotic human, and she felt a sense of belonging she had never found in the marble halls of her ancestors. "Elias," she whispered. She leaned forward. He met her halfway. It was not a kiss of desperate passion, though the heat was there. It was a kiss of acknowledgement, a seal on a pact. They pulled back, resting their foreheads together. "If we die tomorrow," Sarilith said, her voice trembling. "Then we die knowing the truth," Elias said. "And we die together," she added. "Together," Elias promised. They arrived at the capital under the cloak of night. The city was in a frenzy. The festival of ascendance had begun. Fireworks burst in the sky, golden showers of light that illuminated the massive arena built in the center of the plaza. They slipped into the diplomatic compound through a service tunnel Sarilith knew. Ambassador Corinne was waiting for them. She looked exhausted. "Thank God," she said. "The regent has moved the timeline up. The ceremony starts at dawn." "Staged?" Elias asked. "Completely," Corinne said. "They have released a dossier claiming you are a spy sent to assassinate the regent. The crowd is baying for blood. They want to see the armor burn you. Let them watch," Elias said. Sarilith went to her quarters to change. She removed the tactical gear, the trench coat, the weapons. She washed the grime of Orax from her skin. She put on the white ceremonial robe again. But this time, she did not put on the star of loyalty. She left it on the table. Instead, she pinned a small, simple brooch to her sash. It was a piece of raw iron, a souvenir Elias had given her from the Vault Moon, a piece of the old world. She walked to Elias's room. The door was open. He was standing by the balcony looking at the arena. The structure was massive, a bowl of white stone surrounded by towering statues. In the center, under a spotlight that reached the heavens, stood the forbidden armor. It looked small from here, a speck of black and gold. "Ready?" she asked. Elias turned. He was wearing his dress uniform. It was pressed, sharp. He looked like an officer. "No," he said, "but let us do it anyway." He walked over to her. The air between them was charged, heavy with the things they had said and the things they didn't need to say. Sarilith reached out and straightened his collar. Her fingers lingered on his neck. "Remember," she said softly, intent, "you are not there to win. You are not there to conquer. I am there to protect." Elias said. "Protect who?" Sarilith asked. "You," Elias said. Sarilith's eyes shone with unshed tears. She leaned up and kissed him again, a brief, fierce pressure. "Then protect us all." Elias Rook. Dawn broke like a shattered egg, spilling gold light across the plaza. The roar of the crowd was a physical force. Millions of citizens packed the stands. Millions more watched via neural link. Drums beat a slow, rhythmic thunder. Elias stood at the entrance to the tunnel, the darkness behind him, the blinding light ahead. Sarilith stood beside him. She had to take her place in the royal box, but she walked him to the edge. "It is time," she said. Elias took a deep breath. He checked his gloves. He checked his soul. He found fear there, yes, but he also found a strange, quiet calm. He thought of the archivist. The bird does not fear the cage. He looked at Sarilith. "See you on the other side," he said. He stepped out into the light. The crowd screamed. It was a wall of sound, hatred and excitement mixed into a terrible noise. Elias walked. He walked past the jeering faces. He walked past the guards with their leveled weapons. He walked toward the center of the arena. There, on a raised dais of obsidian, waited the forbidden armor. It was taller than he remembered. The black metal seemed to drink the morning light. The gold veins pulsed with a slow, rhythmic beat. It was not an object. It was a presence. Elias climbed the steps. His boots echoed on the stone, high above, in the royal box. The regent stood up. He smiled, a cruel, satisfied expression. "Behold," the regent's voice boomed. "The pretender approaches judgment." Elias stopped. He was 5 feet from the armor. He could feel the heat radiating from it. He could hear the hum in his mind, 1,000 voices whispering in a language he didn't know. He did not look at the regent. He did not look at the crowd. He looked at the empty faceplate of the helmet. "Hello?" he whispered. He raised his hand. The crowd went silent. The galaxy held its breath. Elias Rook reached out and touched the forbidden armor. The High Regent's voice was not just a sound, it was a weather system. It rolled down from the royal box, heavy with disdain, crashing over the millions of spectators in the grand arena and the billions watching via the neural net. "Witness the end of arrogance," the regent declared. "Witness the purity of the dominion, reject the corruption of the lesser." Elias Rook stood alone on the obsidian dais. The air around him shimmered with heat. The forbidden armor loomed, a silent titan of black metal and gold veins, suspended in a stasis field that hummed with a low, threatening frequency. Elias could feel the eyes of the galaxy on his back. He could feel the sweat trickling down his spine. But strangely, the fear was gone. In its place was a cold, crystalline clarity. He was not here to conquer. He was not here to rule. He was here because he had made a promise to a woman who had saved his life, and to a ghost in a machine who had asked to be understood. He took the final step. The stasis field dropped. The hum vanished, replaced by a silence so absolute it hurt the ears. Elias raised his hand. He did not grab the armor. He simply opened his palm, a gesture of offering, not taking. "I do not claim you," Elias whispered into the silence. "I offer myself as the shield. If you need a hand to hold the sword, take mine. But we protect. We do not rule." He pressed his palm against the chest plate. The contact was instant. The world turned white. There was no pain, only a sensation of infinite expansion. Elias felt his consciousness ripped from his body and flung into a storm. He saw cities burning. He saw 1,000 years of silence. He saw the face of the first creator, weeping as the first warlord twisted the armor's purpose. He felt a grief so ancient and so heavy it threatened to crush his mind into dust. "Sorrow," the armor whispered in his blood. "Betrayal." "Not this time," Elias thought back, projecting every ounce of his stubborn human will. "We are the wall. We are the shelter." The white light collapsed inward. A shockwave of energy blasted outward from the dais. It was not fire. It was pure kinetic force. It knocked the front row of guards off their feet. The gold banners of the Dominion shredded in the wind. The light faded. Elias Rook was still standing, but he was no longer just a man in a dress uniform. The forbidden armor had disassembled itself and reformed around him. It was not a clumsy suit of plate. It was a second skin of shifting, organic metal. The shoulders flared like the folded wings of a predatory bird. The helmet had closed over his face, a smooth surface of black glass that reflected the terrified crowd. Feathers made of razor-sharp celestial metal drifted from his arms, hovering in the air like obedient drones. Across the surface of the chest plate, ancient glyphs ignited with a furious, burning blue light. Mirth's voice broke through the stunned silence, amplified over the arena's speakers by the AI's own hacking protocols. "Translation complete," Mirth announced, his voice trembling with digital awe. "The inscription has changed. It now reads, 'The forbidden armor killed all who touched it until a human unleashed its wrath.'" The regent stood up, his face a mask of disbelief. "Kill him," the regent screamed. "Kill the abomination." The spell broke. The Imperial Guard, the elite Praetorians in their gold and white armor, surged forward. There were 50 of them, armed with thermal lances and shock pikes. Elias did not move. He did not have to. The armor moved for him. It was faster than thought. As the first Praetorian lunged, Elias simply stepped aside, a movement so fluid it looked like liquid pouring uphill. He caught the guard's pike with one hand. The metal of the weapon groaned and shattered. With a casual flick of his wrist, Elias sent the guard flying across the dais. The man landed in a heap, armor locked, alive but incapacitated. 3 guards fired thermal beams. Elias raised his left arm. The black feathers swirling around him coalesced instantly into a shield. The beams struck the dark metal and dissipated like water on hot iron. Wrath, the armor whispered. Burn them. No. Elias gritted his teeth, fighting the alien impulse rising in his gut. Disarm. Disable. No death. He stomped his foot. The dais cracked. A wave of precision gravity knocked the remaining 40 guards flat on their backs. Their weapons flew from their hands. Pulled by a magnetic pulse the armor generated. Elias stood amidst the groaning bodies of the galaxy's most feared soldiers. He had not drawn a weapon. He had not shed a drop of blood. The crowd in the stands began to murmur. The silence of terror was replaced by the noise of confusion. The myth was broken. The armor had not killed the human. It had knelt to him in the royal box. The regent turned to Lady Saralith Viel. His eyes were wide with a manic, desperate fury. End this, he hissed, shoving a high-caliber sniper rifle into her hands. You are the loyal daughter. Prove it. Put a bullet in his eye before he speaks. Do it, or your sister dies within the hour. Saralith took the rifle. It was heavy, cold. She looked down at the arena. Elias stood there, a dark god of justice. But she saw the way his head tilted. She saw the tremor in his hand. He was fighting the armor. He was holding back the tide for them. She looked at the regent. He was sweating. The golden facade was melting, revealing the small, frightened tyrant beneath. Saralith walked to the edge of the balcony. She raised the rifle. The crowd gasped. The cameras zoomed in. Lady Viel, the face of the prosecution, was about to execute the traitor. She sighted down the scope. She saw Elias's helmet turn toward her. He knew, and he did not raise a shield. He trusted her. Saralith shifted her aim. She pulled the trigger. The shot cracked like thunder, high above the arena. The massive holographic projector that displayed the regent's face exploded in a shower of sparks and glass. The image of the tyrant flickered and died, leaving only the empty sky. Saralith threw the rifle to the floor. She ripped the star of loyalty from her neck and tossed it over the railing. There is no treason here, she shouted, her voice amplified by the acoustics of the arena. She vaulted over the railing. It was a 20-foot drop. She landed in a crouch on the dais, her white robes billowing. She stood up and walked to Elias's side. She faced the regent. She faced the cameras. She faced the galaxy. The treason belongs to the throne, she declared. We were told the armor was a curse. We were told it judged purity. That was a lie. It judges tyranny. She pointed at the regent. It rejected our emperors because they were butchers. It accepted this human because he came to protect, not to rule. The history you know is a fabrication designed to keep you on your knees. The fallout was instantaneous. In the Senate House, halfway across the city, the screen went black as censors tried to cut the feed. But it was too late. Half the senators were already shouting, demanding answers. Representatives from the outer rim, long oppressed by the Dominion, began walking out of the chamber. In the arena, the crowd was in an uproar. The chant began in the cheap seats, low and rhythmic. Truth, truth, truth. The regent's face turned a shade of purple she had never seen before. Order 66 is insufficient, he roared into his comms. Initiate Protocol 0, martial law, total containment. If the city falls, burn it. Sirens began to wail, not the police sirens, but the deep, mournful horns of war. The sky above the arena darkened as the planetary defense shield snapped into place, turning the day into a twilight of red emergency lights. Swarms of enforcement drones poured from the Citadel towers like angry wasps. Elias grabbed Saralith's arm. His grip was like a vice. Too many. The armor's voice echoed in his mind. bleeding into his spoken words. "We must purge the nest. We must level the tower." Elias stumbled. The black metal on his arm spiked, jagged edges forming where smooth curves had been. "Elias?" Sarilith asked, grabbing his shoulders. "It is loud." Elias gasped. His voice sounded synthesized, distorted. "It wants to kill him. Sarilith. It wants to kill them all. It remembers what they did to its makers. The rage, it is like drowning." Sarilith slammed her hands against his chest plate. "Look at me," she commanded. The blank faceplate stared down at her. "You are Elias Rook," she said, fierce and fast. "You drink terrible coffee. You make bad jokes. You saved a boy in the atrium when you could have run. You are not a weapon. You are a man." The armor shuddered. The spikes retracted. Elias let out a breath that sounded like steam escaping a valve. "I am back," he wheezed. "But we need to leave. Now." "Mirth!" Elias yelled. "I am working on it!" Mirth shouted over the comms. "I am trying to hack the traffic control grid to clear a path. But the firewalls are aggressive. I need a distraction." "A distraction?" Elias asked, looking at the 1,000 combat drones descending toward them. "Leave it to me," Mirth chirped. Suddenly, every public speaker in the city, every street announcement system, every shopping mall intercom, every data pad within 10 miles, screeched with static. Then, music began to play. It was not the Imperial anthem. It was not a somber war dirge. It was a bouncy, synthetic pop song from the Outer Rim, a ridiculous earworm about a lonely space crab looking for love. Click-clack, goes the heart. Snap-snap goes the claw. The contrast was so jarring that for a moment, the entire battlefield froze. The drones hovered, their logic processors confused by the unexpected audio input. The Regent stopped screaming. The crowd looked around in bewilderment. "It is a viral meme," Mirth shouted. "I have looped it on maximum volume. Run!" "It is undoubtedly your finest work," Elias muttered. He swept Sarilith into his arms. The armor's strength was effortless. He crouched and leaped. They soared into the air, propelled by gravity dampeners in the suit's boots. They landed on the upper tier of the arena, sprinting past stunned spectators who were too busy humming along to the crab song to stop them. The war sloop Aegis was docked at the private royal pad adjacent to the arena. It was a sleek, predatory vessel, designed for the Regent's personal guard. Elias kicked the airlock door. It crumpled inward. They threw themselves onto the bridge. "Mirth, take the wheel!" Elias shouted, transferring to ship systems. Mirth replied, "Goodbye. Public address system. The crab song will play for another 10 minutes. You are welcome." The engines of the Aegis roared to life. The ship tore free from the docking clamps, spinning around to face the blockade of drones. "They are locking weapons," Sarilith warned, strapping herself into the co-pilot seat. Elias sat in the gunner's chair. He plugged his suit directly into the ship's interface. He did not need to aim with his hands. The armor connected him to the ship's sensors. He was the ship. He felt the drones targeting them. He felt the intent of the pilots. Disable. He commanded the armor. Do not destroy. The Aegis fired a spread of ion pulse torpedoes. They detonated in the center of the drone swarm, creating a massive electromagnetic sphere. The drones dropped out of the sky like stones, their circuits fried but their pilots alive in their remote cockpits. "Punch it," Elias shouted. The sloop rocketed upward, accelerating through the atmosphere. The red shield of the planetary blockade loomed ahead. "We cannot breach that," Sarilith said. "It is solid energy." The armor pulsed. Elias felt a surge of ancient knowledge. "The shield is a frequency." The armor whispered, "Sing the counter note." Elias closed his eyes. He let the armor modulate the ship's deflector dish. The Aegis began to vibrate, humming a note so deep it rattled their teeth. They hit the red shield. Instead of crashing, they passed through it like a stone passing through the surface of a pond. The shield rippled, warped, and let them through. They broke atmosphere. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and cold, behind them. Aurelian Prime was a chaotic marble of red lights and confusion. Sarilith let out a long, shaky breath. She slumped back in her chair. "We did it," she whispered. Mirth popped up on the holographic dashboard. He was wearing a digital pirate hat. "We are officially the most wanted fugitives in the galaxy," the AI announced cheerfully. "The Regent has put a bounty on our heads the size of a small moon. Also, half the Outer Rim is celebrating. We are trending." Elias disconnected from the ship. The armor receded, folding back into a compact, dormant state that looked like a heavy, ornate coat over his uniform. He felt exhausted, drained, and achy. He looked at Sarilith. She was staring at the view screen, watching her home fade into the distance. She looked sad, but she did not look back. "Are you okay?" Elias asked softly. Sarilith turned to him. She reached out and took his hand. Her grip was strong. "I just started a civil war," she said. "I lost my title. I lost my home. And my sister is probably a hostage." She looked at the armor, then at Elias's tired, kind face. "But for the first time in my life," she said, "I am not lying." Elias squeezed her hand. "We will get your sister," he promised, "and we will finish this." "How?" Sarilith asked. "We are one ship against an empire." Elias smiled. It was a tired smile, but it had teeth. "We have the truth," he said, "and we have a very angry suit of armor. I like our odds. Set a course for the nebula," Elias told Mirth. "Let us disappear for a while. We have some planning to do." "Aye, aye, Captain," Mirth said. Playing smooth jazz for the getaway, the Aegis engaged its warp drive. With a flash of white light, they vanished into the void, leaving the Empire behind and rushing headlong into the legend. The rebellion did not look like a parade. It looked like an argument in a dimly lit cargo bay. The Aegis drifted in the shadow of a gas giant, hiding from the Dominion's long-range scanners. Inside the main hangar, a holographic map flickered, casting blue light onto the faces of the new coalition. It was a motley assembly. There were Aurelian defectors in scuffed white armor, human miners with kinetic pickaxes strapped to their backs, and representatives from the Outer Rim syndicates who looked at Elias Rook not as a hero, but as a weapon to be pointed. "We strike the shipyard at Vexor," said General Tark, a Kistra warlord whose skin was a map of scar tissue. "We burn it. Every technician, every engineer, every guard. We leave nothing but ash." Sarilith Vale stood on the other side of the table. She looked tired. The white ceremonial robes were gone, replaced by practical gray fatigues, but she still commanded the room with a tilt of her chin. "Those technicians are conscripts. Tark," she said, her voice cool and level. "They are civilians forced to work for the war machine. If we slaughter them, we are no better than the Regent." Tark slammed a heavy fist onto the table. The hologram distorted. "War is not a debate club. Lady Vale, you Aurelians had no problem slaughtering my people for 3 centuries. Now you want to talk about mercy?" He turned to Elias. "What does the armor say? God killer? Does it want to file a complaint, or does it want to feed?" Elias stood in the shadows. He was not wearing the full armor, but the symbiotic metal was never fully gone. It sat on his shoulders like a heavy coat, the black feathers twitching in response to the aggression in the room. He felt the heat rising in his chest. It was a physical sensation, a burning itch that demanded release. The armor sensed Tark's anger. It sensed the violence in the air, and it offered a solution. "Crush him," the whisper came, sounding like a voice from the bottom of a well. "He challenges your protection. Remove the threat." Elias gripped the edge of the table until the metal groaned. "We are not burning Vexor," Elias said. His voice was low, but it cut through the noise. "We disable the dry dock. We cripple their production, but we do not target personnel unless they fire first." Tark sneered. "You are soft, human. You hold a star killer in your hand and you use it like a stun baton. This alliance needs a leader with blood in his veins, not water." The warlord turned and marched out, his entourage trailing behind him. The air in the hangar felt suddenly thin. Sarilith watched them go, then looked at Elias. She saw the sweat on his forehead. She saw the way his pupils were dilated, swallowing the iris. She signaled the others to leave. When the room was empty, she walked to him. "It is getting louder, isn't it?" she asked softly. Elias exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. The black metal on his shoulders settled down, the feathers smoothing out. "It hates them," Elias admitted. "It hates the anger. It wants to silence anyone who screams, and it does not understand politics. Sarilith, it only understands threat elimination. If I let go, even for a second." "You won't," Sarilith said. She did not offer empty platitudes. She simply stated it as a fact. "We need answers," Elias said. "We know what the armor can do. We need to know why it was made." Mirth found coordinates in the data we stole from the Vault Moon, a planet called Osea, the origin point, Sarilith noted. "If we are going to win this war without becoming monsters," Elias said, "we need to know the rules of the game." Osea was a world without land. It was a perfect sphere of deep, indigo water, broken only by the skeletal remains of megastructures that pierced the surface like the ribs of a drowned giant. The Aegis descended through the clouds, rain lashing against the hull. "Mirth, give us a scan," Elias said from the pilot's seat, detecting massive energy signatures below the surface. The AI reported. "And Elias, it is the same signature as your suit. We are definitely home." They landed the ship on a landing platform that was half submerged, the rusted metal slick with algae. The ocean stretched out in every direction, vast and indifferent. Elias and Sarilith stepped out. The wind tasted of salt and ozone. "This place is a graveyard," Sarilith said, looking at the ruined towers that spiraled down into the dark water. They walked toward the central spire, a tower of glass and nanolith that seemed to hum with faint power. The doors detected the armor's presence and slid open with a hiss of escaping air. Inside, the air was dry and cool. The walls were lined with memory crystals glowing with a soft, amber light. "This is a library," Elias realized. He approached a central console. As he drew near, the armor on his body reacted. It flowed over his hands, extending tendrils that plugged into the console's interface. Elias gasped as a vision slammed into his mind. He saw the Osea builders. They were the four-armed species he had seen in the vault. They were artists, philosophers. He saw them watching the stars with fear. He saw the first Aurelian expansion fleets arriving, burning worlds. He saw the builders creating the armor. They did not forge it in a fire. They grew it in a vat of biological metal, singing to it, teaching it the concept of sanctuary. The vision shifted. He saw a woman. She was Aurelian. She stood tall, wearing the crest of the House of Vile. She was arguing with a warlord, pleading with him to leave the armor alone. Elias pulled back, breaking the connection. He staggered. Sarilith caught him. "What did you see?" Elias looked at her. His eyes were wide. "Your ancestor," he said. "The one you thought was a loyalist." "High Warlord Vile?" Sarilith asked. No, Elias said. His wife, Lady Valerius Vile. She was one of them. Seralith. She was a dissenter. She worked with the OSHA builders. She tried to hide the armor before the invasion. She was the one who wrote the warning in the vault. Seralith stared at the console. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and touched the amber light. A holographic recording sprang to life. It was the woman from Elias's vision. She looked strikingly like Seralith. The same sharp cheekbones, the same haunted eyes. If you are seeing this, the hologram spoke, her voice tinny with age. Then the empire has fallen, or a miracle has occurred. My husband seeks to use the Guardian as a sword. He does not understand. The Guardian is a mirror. It reflects the heart. If you bring it hate, it will give you apocalypse. If you bring it love, it will give you a shield. Do not touch it unless you are willing to die for a stranger. The hologram flickered and vanished. Seralith stood in silence. Tears tracked slowly down her face. For her entire life, she had carried the shame of her bloodline. She had believed she was the spawn of tyrants, that her instinct for rebellion was a defect. I am not a glitch, she whispered. No, Elias said, moving to stand beside her. You are the legacy. Seralith turned to him. She buried her face in his chest. Elias wrapped his arms around her, the armor shifting to accommodate her, the metal feeling warm and protective. He held her while she wept, a quiet, releasing storm of grief. It is not a weapon of empire, Seralith said, pulling back to look at him. It is a failsafe. It was designed to end the cycle of tyranny. And right now, Elias said, the armor is confused. It has been used as a weapon for so long. It has forgotten how to be anything else. I have to teach it. We have to teach it, Seralith corrected. That night, the storm on Oshia worsened. Thunder shook the submerged spire. Elias and Seralith sat in the observation deck of the Aegis, watching the lightning illuminate the dark ocean. They shared a bottle of synthetic wine Mirth had fabricated. The war feels very far away, Seralith said. She was sitting on a plush bench, her legs tucked under her. It is still there, Elias said, swirling his glass. Tark and his faction are probably planning to blow up a moon right now just to prove a point. Let them plan, Seralith said. Tonight. I do not want to be a general. I do not want to be a lady. Who do you want to be? Elias asked. She looked at him. The ambient light from the storm cast shadows across her face, highlighting the vulnerability she usually kept hidden behind walls of wit and protocol. I want to be the woman who chose the human, she said. Elias set his glass down. He moved closer to her on the bench. The space between them was charged, electric. I am scared. Seralith, he confessed. His voice was rough, not of the regent. I am scared that one day I will wake up and the armor will have eaten the part of me that is Elias, that I will just be a vessel for its judgment. Seralith reached out and placed her hand on his cheek. Her skin was cool, grounding. I know you, Elias. You are stubborn. You are annoying. You are deeply, inconveniently kind. The armor cannot eat that. She leaned in. And if you start to forget, she whispered, lips brushing his, I will remind you. He kissed her. It was slow, deliberate, a question asked and answered. There was no rush, no frantic grabbing. It was a deepening of the gravity that had pulled them together since that first day in the ballroom. Elias's hand moved to her waist, his touch firm but asking permission. Seralith sighed into his mouth, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. It was an intimacy built on shared danger and absolute trust. It was the feeling of taking off heavy armor and realizing you were safe enough to be skin. Elias pulled back slightly, resting his forehead against hers. I have never wanted anything more than to not screw this up, he murmured. Saralith laughed, a low, throaty sound. Then do not, she said. She kissed him again, deeper this time, a promise of a future they might not live to see, but were willing to fight for. A loud chime echoed through the room. Red alert! Red alert! Mirth's voice blared from the speakers. Elias and Saralith jumped apart. Mirth! Elias groaned, putting his head in his hands. Your timing is historically bad. I am interrupting a rise in dopamine levels of 80%, Mirth said. I have run a relationship risk assessment. While physical intimacy is excellent for morale, survival is generally considered a prerequisite for a second date. What is it? Saralith asked, smoothing her hair and shifting instantly back into command mode. Incoming transmission from the Resistance Network, Mirth said. Priority Alpha, you need to see this. The main screen lit up. It was a broadcast from the Aurelian capital. The regent sat on his throne. He looked older, more haggard than before, but his eyes burned with a new, fanatic light. The rebellion spreads like a virus, the regent said, but a virus requires a host. We shall remove the host. The view shifted to show a fleet of ships launching from the orbital dock. They were unlike any warships Elias had seen. They were bulbous, organic-looking, pulsating with a sickly green light. The Mind Siphon Fleet, Saralith whispered. Her face went pale. What is it? Elias asked. It is forbidden tech, Saralith said. Those ships, they broadcast a psionic carrier wave. They do not kill. They override. They target the neural pathways of every sentient being on a planet and rewrite their autonomy. They turn people into drones, Elias realized with horror. Worse, Saralith said. They turn them into loyalists. The victims remain conscious. They see what they are doing. They feel the horror. But their bodies obey the regent. It is slavery of the soul. The regent's voice returned. We travel to the Sector 7, the heart of the rebellion. By tomorrow, your freedom fighters will be my most devoted soldiers. The transmission cut. Sector 7, Elias said. That is a heavy civilian population. Billions of people. We have to stop them, Saralith said. We blow them out of the sky, Elias said. The armor flared on his shoulders, sharp and jagged. The intent was clear. Abomination. Erase it. We cannot, Saralith said. Elias turned to her. Saralith, those ships are going to enslave billions. We have to destroy them. The crews on those ships are innocent, Saralith argued. The people they are going to enslave are innocent. If we blow up that fleet, we kill 50,000 conscripted sailors. We become the butchers Tark wants us to be. Then what do we do? Elias shouted. He paced the bridge, the armor restless. We cannot let them reach the planet. We hijack the signal, Saralith said. She pulled up a schematic. The mind siphon works on a central network, a hive mind. If we can infiltrate the flagship, we can inject a counterpulse. We can wake them up. It is suicide, Elias said. We would have to fly right into the middle of the fleet. And if we do not, Saralith said, looking him in the eye, we lose the war. Not because we died, but because we became exactly what we are fighting against. Strength without empathy is cruelty. Elias, you told me that. Elias looked at her. He saw the resolve in her eyes. She was right. She was terrifyingly, beautifully right. He took a deep breath. The armor settled. Protection, he thought to the machine, not vengeance. Okay, Elias said. We do it your way. Mirth, plot a course for Sector 7. The battle for Sector 7 was a kaleidoscope of violence. The rebel fleet, led by General Tark, engaged the Dominion escort ships. Lasers and plasma bolts stitched the darkness of space. The Aegis ignored the dogfight. It flew straight for the Mind Siphon flagship, a massive pulsating leviathan in the center of the formation. "They are locking onto us," Mirth shouted, mental interference detecting. Elias felt it, a pressure in his skull, like a headache trying to pry open his memories. "Get out!" The armor roared in his mind. "This mind is occupied." The armor projected a psychic shield around the ship, a bubble of golden will that deflected the green psionic waves. "Get me close!" Elias yelled. Sarilith flew the ship with surgical precision, weaving through the defensive fire. "We are in range!" she shouted. Elias ran to the airlock. He did not take a weapon. He took a data spike Sarilith had coded. "I am going outside," he said. "You are what?" Mirth asked. Elias cycled the airlock. The silence of space greeted him. The armor fully encased him, wings spreading to catch the solar winds. He launched himself from the Aegis. He was a black streak against the green glow of the enemy ship. He dodged turret fire, the armor anticipating the shots before they were fired. He landed on the hull of the flagship. He found the external maintenance port. He slammed his hand onto the metal. The armor flowed into the ship's systems. Elias was not a hacker, but the armor was. It tore through the firewalls with the subtlety of a battering ram. "Connect," Elias thought. He was suddenly inside the network. He could feel the minds of the crew, thousands of terrified people, trapped in their own bodies, forced to man the guns. He felt the mind of the Regent's commander, a cold, jagged presence controlling them. "Release them," Elias commanded. The commander pushed back. "Order is peace. Submission is safety." Elias focused. He thought of Sarilith. He thought of the way she looked at him in the storm. He thought of the archivist's turtle face. He thought of the boy he had saved in the atrium. He poured all of that humanity, all of that messy, chaotic love into the network. "Freedom is the only safety." Elias screamed into the void. The armor amplified his intent 1,000-fold. A shockwave of golden light erupted from the flagship. It cascaded through the fleet. The green lights turned gold. Then they went dark. On the bridge of the Aegis, Sarilith watched the tactical display. The enemy ships drifted to a halt, their weapons powered down. "They are shutting down," Mirth said. "The Mind Siphon is offline." Elias flew back to the ship, landing heavily in the airlock. He stumbled onto the bridge, the armor retracting. He was bleeding from the nose. He looked exhausted. "Did it work?" he croaked. Sarilith checked the comms. Voices were flooding the channels. Confusion, relief, crying. The crews were waking up. "They are free," she said. Suddenly, a new alarm blared. "Multiple launches detected from the rebel flank," Mirth said. "General Tark is firing torpedoes." "What?" Elias shouted. On the screen, streaks of fire raced toward the disabled Dominion fleet. "Stop!" Sarilith screamed into the comms. "Tark, stand down! They have surrendered!" The voice of the warlord crackled back, cold and satisfied. "They are Imperial assets. Lady Vale, we do not take chances." The torpedoes struck. 3 of the disabled Mind Siphon ships vanished in blossoms of nuclear fire. Thousands of newly freed souls were vaporized in an instant. "No!" Elias yelled, slamming his hand against the viewport. The rest of the Dominion fleet, terrified and leaderless, engaged their emergency warp drives and scattered. The battle was over, but the victory tasted like ash. Later, back at the rally point, the fracture was complete. General Tark stood before them, unapologetic. "We destroyed the threat," he said. "You murdered prisoners of war," Elias said. His voice was deadly quiet. "I won the battle," Tark said. You and your high-minded ideals nearly got us killed. From now on, the Outer Rim factions operate alone. We will burn the Dominion down, root and stem. Stay out of our way. Godkiller. Tark took half the fleet with him. The rebellion was split in two. Elias and Sarilith stood on the bridge of the Aegis. They had saved millions, but they had lost their army. We are alone, Sarilith said. Not alone, Mirth said quietly. The AI projected a news feed. It was from the capital. The Regent had not been idle while they were fighting. The screen showed the moon of Aurelian Prime. It was opening. The crust of the moon was peeling back like the skin of a fruit, revealing a mechanism of terrifying scale. It was a cannon the size of a continent, powered by the same black and gold energy as the armor. The planet killer, Mirth whispered. The Regent's face appeared on the feed. You have delayed the inevitable, he said. But patience has its limits. In 24 hours, the celestial weapon will be fully charged. I will start with the rebel worlds, and I will end with Earth. Elias looked at the weapon. It was the dark mirror of his armor. The same technology, twisted for absolute destruction. He looked at Sarilith. She took his hand. Her grip was iron hard. We have to go back, she said. Into the heart of the fire, Elias said. To finish it, Sarilith said. Elias nodded. He looked at the stars. One ship, he said. One suit of armor, and a galaxy to save. Mirth, Elias said. Power up the drive. We are going to Aurelian Prime. And this time, Elias added, the armor's eyes glowing a faint, dangerous blue. We are not knocking on the door. We are kicking it in. The orbital crown of Aurelian Prime was not merely a space station. It was a halo of diamond and durasteel, a ring that encircled the planet's equator like a shackle. From the cockpit of the stolen war sloop Aegis, Lieutenant Elias Rook stared at the structure. It bristled with enough firepower to vaporize a moon. In the center of the ring, directly above the capital city, the planet killer weapon was charging. It looked like an angry, unblinking eye, glowing with a malevolent violet light. We have 20 minutes before primary ignition, Mirth announced. His voice lacked its usual digital cheer. The probability of survival is currently hovering around 3%. And that is, if I round up. Never tell me the odds. Mirth, Elias said, tightening the straps of his flight seat. Just find me a hole in that defense grid. Beside him, Lady Sarilith Vael was working the comms console. Her face was illuminated by the scrolling feeds of galactic news networks. The propaganda machine was running hot. Listen to this, she said, her voice tight. The official channels are reporting that I have been brainwashed by a Terran blood cult. They are calling you the Butcher of the Outer Rim. They say you are coming to feed the planet to your demon armor. They are scared, Elias said. They are effective, Sarilith countered. We are losing the war for hearts and minds. Elias, if we land, half the population will try to kill us before we even reach the Regent. We need to change the narrative. We will change it when we turn off that gun, Elias said. The Aegis shuddered as a warning shot flashed across their bow. A squadron of interceptors peeled off from the station's patrol wing, diving toward them. Here we go, Elias said. Mirth, divert all power to the forward shields. Sarilith, can you jam their targeting computers? I can try, Sarilith said, but they are using military-grade encryption. The armor on Elias's shoulders shifted. It sensed the incoming threat. It did not panic. It anticipated. Let me sing, the armor whispered in Elias's mind. The machines will listen. Elias closed his eyes for a second. Do not break them. He ordered the suit. Just confuse them. He placed his hand on the ship's dashboard. The black veins of the armor flowed into the console. A pulse of golden energy shot out from the aegis, invisible to the naked eye but deafening to the sensors of the approaching fighters. The interceptors broke formation. Their movements became erratic, sluggish. They drifted apart like leaves in a sudden wind. "Sensor ghosts," Mirth reported. "They think we just multiplied into 500 different ships." "Nice trick, boss." "We have an opening," Elias said. "Punch it." The Aegis surged forward, slipping through the gap in the patrol line. The orbital crown loomed larger, filling the viewport until it was the only thing in the universe. They breached the hangar bay of the weapons station with a controlled crash that stripped the landing gear off the sloop. Smoke filled the airlock as Elias and Sarilith stumbled out. The hangar was chaotic. Sirens blared. Repair crews and security droids were scrambling. Elias stood tall. The forbidden armor encased him instantly, the helmet sliding over his face. He looked like a nightmare of black metal and celestial wrath. Sarilith drew her blaster. She looked at him. "To the command center?" she asked. "To the command center." Elias confirmed. They moved. It was not a stealth mission. It was a force of nature moving through a hallway. Imperial guards rushed them, firing plasma rifles. Elias did not dodge. He raised a hand, and the armor generated a kinetic field that caught the bolts and dissolved them. He flicked his fingers, and the guards were lifted off their feet and pinned gently but firmly against the walls by gravity wells. "No death," Elias chanted in his mind. "No martyrs." They reached a turbo lift as the doors slid shut, cutting off the sound of the alarms. Sarilith's personal communicator chirped. It was a priority override code. Only one person had that frequency. "The Regent," Sarilith whispered. She accepted the call. A holographic projection sprang up in the small elevator car. The High Regent stood in his throne room. He looked manic, his eyes rimmed with red. Behind him, kneeling on the floor with a guard's pistol to her head, was a young woman. "Ilara," Sarilith breathed. Her sister looked terrified, bruises darkening her pale skin. "Lady Vale," the Regent said. His voice was smooth, terrible. "You are nearing the command deck. I can track your biosignature. You have a choice." "Let her go," Sarilith said, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. "Surrender the human," the Regent said. "Kill him. Bring me the armor. If you do, your sister lives. Your family is restored. If you take one more step toward this room, I will paint the walls with her blood." The hologram flickered. Sarilith stared at the image. She looked at Ilara, who was weeping silently. She looked at Elias. The armor hummed. It sensed the ultimatum. It sensed the cruelty. "Save the kin," the armor suggested. "Burn the tyrant." Elias looked at Sarilith. He could not make this choice for her. Sarilith closed her eyes. She thought of the history of her family. Centuries of bowing to monsters to keep their position. Centuries of silence. She opened her eyes. They were dry and hard as diamonds. "I am sorry, Ilara," she whispered to the air. She looked at the Regent. "You think you can barter with fear," she said. "But the currency has changed." She turned to Mirth, who was integrated into Elias's suit. "Mirth, do we still have the data from the archivist? The proof of the genocide? The origin of the armor?" "It is locked and loaded," Mirth said. "Broadcast it," Sarilith commanded. "To where?" Mirth asked. "To everywhere," Sarilith said. "To every screen, every datapad, every neural link in the Dominion. Override the military bands. Override the civilian entertainment channels. Show them everything. But the Regent..." Elias started. "He has already lost," Sarilith said. She looked at the hologram. "Go ahead," she told the Regent. "Execute her. And while you do, 500 billion citizens will watch the footage of your grandfather ordering the mass extinction of the Kystra. They will see the documents proving you have been lying about the armor for 1,000 years. You can kill my sister, but you cannot kill the truth. The regent's face twisted. He looked at the guard holding the gun. "Shoot her!" he screamed. The guard hesitated. His helmet display was flashing, and he was seeing the data. He was seeing the lies. "I said shoot her!" the regent roared. The guard lowered the weapon. I cannot, sir," the guard stammered. "The file, it says the Kystra were unarmed. It says we vented their atmosphere." "Mutiny!" the regent shrieked. The hologram cut out. Saralith leaned against the wall of the lift, trembling. "You called his bluff," Elias said gently. "It was not a bluff." Saralith said, "I just made the cost of pulling the trigger higher than the price of his own survival." The lift doors opened. "Let us finish this," she said. The command deck of the orbital crown was a cavernous dome of glass, looking down on the planet below. In the center of the room stood the firing mechanism for the planet killer. It was a massive pillar of black machinery, pulsing with the same violet light as the eye outside. The regent stood at the console. He was alone. His guards had backed away, standing near the exits, their weapons lowered, watching the data scrolls on the wall screens. The truth was spreading like wildfire. The regent looked up as Elias and Saralith entered. He looked small against the backdrop of the stars. "You have ruined everything," the regent whispered. "You ruined it yourself," Elias said. His voice was amplified by the armor, a deep, resonant sound. "You built a house on sand and got mad when the tide came in." The regent laughed, a brittle, cracking sound. "You speak of tides? I am the dam. Without me, this galaxy is chaos. You think these people can rule themselves? They are sheep. They need a shepherd. They need fear to keep them warm." He slammed his hand onto a red panel. Launch sequence initiated. The computer voice announced, T-2 minutes. He locked the controls. "I may fall," the regent sneered, "but I will burn the infection out before I go." The weapon targets the rebellion centers. Half the planet will die, but order will remain. Elias stepped forward. The armor flared. "Destroy the machine," the armor demanded. "Shatter the lens." Elias looked at the pillar. He could feel the energy building inside it. It was resonant with his suit. They were made of the same ancient tech. "If I destroy the machine, the feedback will crack the planet's crust," Elias realized. "It will cause earthquakes, tsunamis. Millions will die." He walked up to the pillar. "Stop!" the regent shouted, pulling a small pistol from his robes. He fired. The bullet flattened against Elias's chest plate and fell to the floor. Elias did not even slow down. He reached the pillar. He placed both hands on the vibrating metal. "Do not destroy." Elias spoke to the armor and to the weapon. "Heal." The armor resisted. It wanted to break. It wanted to punish. "Authority must be accountable," Elias said, his voice echoing in the psychic lattice that connected the two machines. "Power without consent is tyranny. We do not break the world to save it." He pushed his will into the machine. He did not try to overpower the energy. He tried to guide it. He showed the machine the image of the boy in the atrium. He showed it Saralith's face. He showed it the concept of a shield. Protection must never require dehumanization. The violet light in the pillar stuttered. It turned white. Then it turned gold. "The weapon is retargeting," the computer voice said. "Target lock. Command matrix." The regent's eyes went wide. "What are you doing?" he screamed. The energy that had been building up to destroy a continent flowed backward. It surged through the floor, through the cables, and into the command console where the regent stood. It did not explode. It simply erased. The console sparked and went dark. The regent's codes were wiped. The firing mechanism fused into a solid, inert block of metal. Then, the energy lashed out in a psychic wave. It hit the regent. He fell to his knees, clutching his head. He was not physically harmed, but the armor had stripped him bare. Every secret, every fear, every act of cruelty he had ever committed was pulled from his mind and broadcast to the lattice. Every person in the room, every person on the planet felt the regent's shame. They felt his smallness. They saw him not as a god, but as a terrified, petty man who hurt others to feel big. The regent curled into a ball, sobbing. "It is over," Sarilith said. She walked over to the guards. They looked at her, then at the weeping man on the floor. "Arrest him," she said. The captain of the guard nodded slowly. He signaled his men. They moved in, lifting the regent by his arms. He did not fight. He was broken by the weight of his own revealed soul. Elias stepped back from the pillar. The armor retracted, leaving him standing in his sweat-soaked uniform. He leaned against the console, gasping for air. "You okay?" Sarilith asked, rushing to his side. "I think I just lectured a superweapon on ethics." Elias wheezed. "I need a nap." Sarilith laughed. She kissed his forehead. "You did good, human. You did good." The aftermath was not a parade. It was a lot of paperwork. 3 days later, the Grand Senate convened. It was a chaotic session. Representatives from the Kistra, the Outer Rim, and the Aurelian nobility argued over borders, reparations, and justice. But there was no war. The revelation of the archives had drained the venom from the loyalist cause. The army had stood down. The people were too busy processing the truth to fight. The regent was not executed. That would have been too easy. He was sentenced by a multi-species tribunal to life imprisonment on a rehabilitation colony, where he would work the hydroponic farms alongside the people he had once looked down upon. In the center of the Senate floor, Lady Sarilith Vial stood at the podium. "The crown is yours." Lady Vial, the Speaker of the House, said, "By right of blood and by right of conquest, the people call for a queen." Sarilith looked at the heavy gold circlet resting on the velvet cushion. It was beautiful. It was power. It was everything she had been raised to want. She looked at the gallery. Elias was there, leaning against a pillar, watching her. He gave a small nod. She looked back at the speaker. "I decline," she said. A gasp ran through the chamber. "We do not need another perfect ruler," Sarilith said, her voice clear and strong. "We need a system that survives bad ones. I will not wear a crown. I will serve on the council, if you will have me. But the throne ends today." She walked away from the podium. The era of the Dominion was over. The era of the coalition had begun. Later that evening, Elias stood on the landing pad of the Senate Tower. The Aegis was prepped for launch. The forbidden armor sat in a containment unit nearby. It was dormant, a statue of black glass. Sarilith walked out to join him. The wind whipped her hair across her face. "So," she said, "you are leaving?" "I have to," Elias said. He patted the containment unit. "This thing, it is too dangerous to keep in one place, and I am too biased to be its only keeper." "Where are you taking it?" Sarilith asked. "To the Citadel of Whispers," Elias said. "The neutral zone. We are setting up a rotation, a council of guardians, one human, one Aurelian, one Kistra. We will watch it together. We will make sure it is never used to rule again." "It sounds lonely," Sarilith said. "It will be," Elias admitted. "But it is necessary." Sarilith stepped closer. She took his lapels in her hands. "You know," she said, "the Council of Guardians will need a liaison from the Senate. Someone to conduct surprise inspections." "Inspections?" Elias smiled. Sounds bureaucratic. Very, Saralith murmured. I might have to visit every week. Maybe stay for the weekend. To ensure compliance. Elias wrapped his arms around her waist. I think I would like that, he said. They stood there for a long moment, the city lights of a free world twinkling below them. It was a messy world now. There were arguments in the streets, factions forming, debates raging. It was chaotic. It was loud. It was perfect. I never asked, Saralith said softly. What did it feel like when you touched it the first time? Elias looked at the armor, then back at the woman he loved. It felt like falling, he said. But then, it felt like being caught. He leaned down and kissed her. It was a kiss of promise, of partnership. A kiss that said the war was over, but the life was just beginning. Saralith pulled back, her eyes shining. Go, she said. Before I arrest you again just to keep you here, I will be back, Elias promised. He boarded the ship, the Aegis lifted off, climbing into the night sky. Saralith watched him go until he was just another star in the constellation. She took a deep breath of the cool air. She turned back toward the Senate Tower, ready to build something new. Up in the void, the armor hummed in its case. It was no longer a beast. It was no longer a god. It was a sword in a sheath, resting. It had learned the hardest lesson of all, that the greatest display of power is the choice to lay it down. Elias punched in the coordinates. Mirth, take us out, he said. I, Guardian, the AI replied. The ship vanished into warp, leaving a streak of gold light across the dark, a scar that had healed into a horizon.